So what if I told you there's this entire system of knowledge, one that's thousands of years old, that modern science is only just now starting to get its head around? Today, we're diving into the power of indigenous knowledge.
All right, let's jump right in. Our story starts with something that, for a long time, was just written off as simple folklore, a tale that might just change how you think about scientific discovery.
You know, the Potawatomi people, they have these incredible stories. Stories about trees gathering, making plans, basically deciding together how to grow and survive. For centuries, most people heard that and thought, okay, that's a beautiful metaphor, a nice myth. But what if it was way more than that?
And this is where things get absolutely wild. In just the last few years, Western science has finally started to catch up. I mean, botanists have found really compelling evidence that trees actually do communicate. They're sharing resources, sending information, all through these huge underground fungal networks, and even airborne chemical signals. It's incredible.
So that leads to the big question, right? How in the world did indigenous peoples thousands of years ago figure something out that our scientists are only just now discovering with all of our fancy advanced technology?
Well, the answer really gets at this profound idea that what we usually call science isn't the only way to gain knowledge. It turns out there are different ways of knowing.
Okay, think about it like this. Western science, a lot of the time, is all about being objective, right? You separate yourself, the observer, from the thing you're observing. But in contrast, a lot of indigenous ways of knowing are fundamentally relational. They're built on things like respect and reciprocity. It's about having an active relationship with the world. See, all knowledge is shaped by your perspective, and this is just a profoundly different one.
And don't think this is some casual system. It's just as rigorous, but its methods are way broader. Yeah, it starts with observation, just like the scientific method, but it also puts huge value on knowledge that comes from stories, from oral history, and from a connection that goes way beyond just our five senses.
And this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea, not at all. These ways of knowing led to some absolutely incredible real-world inventions and a super deep understanding of human history.
All right, check this out. Across the plains of the US and Canada, you find these mysterious stone structures. They're called medicine wheels, and many of them are thousands of years old. For years, archaeologists had all these theories. Maybe they were astronomical tools, maybe ritual sites, but the evidence was always, kind of incomplete.
So the big breakthrough? It came when archaeologists in Alberta actually sat down and listened to the elders from the Blackfoot Confederacy. An elder named John Wolfchild, he shared the oral history of his great-uncle, a famous warrior called McCoy Puck. And it turns out he was honored with a medicine wheel as a memorial. And just like that, boom, the stones had a story, a purpose that science, on its own, just couldn't uncover.
I mean, this is just a perfect example of how indigenous knowledge has been driving technology for millennia. The Inuit, they invented kayaks from sealskin 4,000 years ago. The Haudenosaunee invented lacrosse. And the Chumash people, get this, they were seafaring an incredible 11,000 years ago. That's long before many of the ancient cultures we always hear about in Europe or Asia.
Let's dive into that a bit. Their canoe, the Tomol, was one of the most advanced ships in all of North America. We're talking huge, up to 30 feet long. They were built from redwood planks because the Chumash knew that redwood rots much more slowly, and they were sealed completely watertight with this really sophisticated boiled pine tar mixture. I mean, this is advanced engineering, people. It was born from thousands of years of observation and having a real relationship with the ocean.
Okay, so this is so important. This isn't just a history lesson. Today, there's a powerful movement to braid these worldviews together, to actually solve some of our most complex modern-day challenges.
The Mi'kmaq people actually have a word for this concept. It's Ituapmunk, which means two-eyed seeing. And as Elder Albert Marshall explains it, the idea is to see with the strengths of indigenous knowledge in one eye and the strengths of Western science in the other. When you use both eyes together, that's when you get the full, complete picture. It's a beautiful idea, right?
And for a really powerful modern example of two-eyed seeing, look no further than NASA astronaut Nicole Mann. In 2023, she made history. She became the first indigenous woman in space, spending 157 days up on the International Space Station.
So while she was up there, in orbit, she was studying plant growth, and her reflection on it is so telling. She talked about the psychological benefit of growing plants in space, and how it helps you feel connected back to Earth.
That just beautifully braids cutting-edge space science with that foundational indigenous value of having a deep personal connection to place.
So let's bring it back down to Earth and see how this brilliant concept of braiding knowledge is being used to tackle a truly global crisis.
And the stakes here, they really couldn't be any higher. Right now, nearly 2 million of our planet's species are facing extinction, and it's largely because of human activity. It is, without a doubt, one of the most pressing issues of our time.
But here's a really critical piece of the puzzle that we can't ignore. This decline in biodiversity, it's happening at a significantly slower rate on lands that are managed by indigenous peoples. We're seeing less deforestation, lower pollution. Something is fundamentally working there, and we need to pay attention.
Want a real-world example? Look at the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, the CSKT, up in Montana. They manage the CSKT bison range using their traditional practices. That includes things like controlled burns, an ancient technique that, it turns out, reduces the risk of massive wildfires, encourages new plants to grow for the bison, and even creates these amazing opportunities to educate visitors.
So the big takeaway here is crystal clear. Conservationists are now recognizing that indigenous land management, built on literally generations of deep knowledge, is one of our most effective tools for protecting biodiversity and fighting climate change.
So, that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. If combining this ancient wisdom with modern science, this whole idea of two-eyed seeing, can help us reach for the stars and heal our own planet, just imagine what other massive challenges we could solve if we finally started bringing these two powerful ways of knowing together.